Welcome, and thanks for tuning in to the Lil Smokey tying tutorial. This pint-sized version of the smoke and mirrors is a simpler version involving a cone head instead of dumbbells, but it has the same concepts as the big one. We got a little marabou tail, we got a puller chenille body, size 4 heavy-duty jig hook, 4 rubber legs, and some ice dub. And we're going to start by attaching our thread here and building a little thread bump right at the bend. And that is where we are going to attach our marabou tail, which we're going to use the core fibers of the marabou and try to trim those so the tips are lined up. No quill in there, that way you get plenty of movement and action. And if you keep them tied in on the top of the hook, they're not going to foul, which is really nice, especially if you plan on using this with a two-hander. Now I like the length of the marabou tail to be similar to from the eye to the bend. So here I just backtracked a little bit so I could pull a little bit more, put a little bit more length in there. Get that tips trimmed up there nice and clean, and we're going to attach our puller chenille here, which, you know, you might not think you need much, but on this fly I like to use quite a bit. So 4 or 5 inches, and this will allow you to get a nice tight amount of body in there, and then because we're going to trim it down pretty heavily. Winding up to where the cone is, or where the jig is, I'm going to attach my rubber legs with a single wrap, X wrap each way, to be kind of right behind the cone, with a little gap. So that's and then that you'll see as we wrap the puller chenille forward, how that'll all work out. And as we're palmering, just keep it clear. And once you get up to the rubber legs, you're going to retrace those X-wrap steps by passing the rubber legs underneath and then coming back over the top. So we'll pass underneath, come over the top, and then come back over and then in front on the next wrap. And that's gonna secure your rubber legs in there without risking damaging them with extensive thread pressure. Get a bunch of wraps of the puller chenille up there in front of the rubber legs, which is gonna be underneath the cone. After, you know, once we get a little further on, but tie that off and trim it, and throw yourself a nice thread base down underneath there, and then trim to your specs. I like the fibers to go about 3/4 of the way out to the rubber legs roughly, at the rubber legs, and then taper back slightly to the tail. Once you've got all your fibers trimmed and everything's looking clean, you're going to add a pretty substantial size clump of ice dub, and this is going to go underneath the cone, and we're going to glue the cone to this ice dub. So you need a decent amount, and you can kind of gauge that and add if you need to. Throw a 1/2 inch in there, and you're ready to cut thread here and finish up this little bugger. And lots of glue. I like to coat the entire chunk of ice dub underneath there. Just watch your legs and your body, any final little nips and tucks here, take care of that. And once you've coated your dubbing with your glue, we're gonna put a little pressure and push that cone back, and that is going to wrap up the tying and the building portion of the little Smokey. I like to add a little barred tail, which really seems to look nice. I've done them in 2 tones, not necessary, but kind of fun. Once you've splayed your legs out, you know, take your Sharpie and bar that tail up. This is a really cool fly because you can throw it underneath a popper or a big dry fly. It casts so darn good and accurately that it's definitely one of my choice flies to fish on a windy day with a spey rod because it cuts through the wind so well, and it catches some really big fish, and it's been a productive fly on the coast for redfish and trout and places where maybe a little smaller fly is really good, but you still need a great hook to deal with a bigger fish. This little morsel is an absolutely deadly bug, and it works as well as it is simple. Thanks for tuning in, and enjoy.